Hey guys, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Salty Ginger Talk. Glad to have you back. So, today's episode, we're going to talk about how to deal with volatile people. I use the word volatile, you can use irrational, you can use difficult, whatever. We all deal with that seem like they are in a different reality or see a different reality than the one that we see. They're intentionally difficult. They always push back. They always are bristly when you deal with them. And those are the folks that we're focused on in our conversation here. So, there's times in life where we encounter people who are emotional, unreasonable, or volatile. In some situations, and by far the best solution is to ignore them or walk away from people with this behavior. If you encounter someone at a restaurant, if you encounter someone at a park, if you encounter someone in a store and they're being kind of crazy, just walk away. It's not worth getting into it with them. It's not worth spending your time and effort and energy on. Just walk. It's really that simple. Just walk away from people. There are some instances, though, where you have to deal with them. Maybe you work with them. Maybe there's someone in your kids' activities, in your kids' ballet class, or your kids' sports team, or your kids' music lesson, whatever the case may be, or maybe even someone in your family. It doesn't matter. So you don't have a choice. You're going to wind up dealing with folks like this. And there's times where it doesn't matter if you want to walk away or not. You need to get to an outcome in a particular situation. And the way to get to that outcome is with or through that other person. So we're going to talk about some steps and some tools and some techniques on how to do that. One thing to keep in mind is toxic people, volatile people, they defy logic. So what you cannot do is reason with them. Reasoning with an illogical person is not going to work. Reasoning with an irrational person is not going to work. Some are oblivious to their negative effects on others, and some people enjoy causing the chaos and provoking people. So regardless of which way it goes, whether they're just oblivious and see a different and alternate reality or they're intentionally pushing your buttons, it doesn't really matter. They create complexity, strife, and stress in your world if you let them. And what we're going to talk about today is how not to let them do that. So it doesn't matter what the situation is. You can develop methods of dealing with people to de-escalate situations, change their perspectives, and get them to see things from a different point of view. So a lot of these are tools that I have developed and used through the years. With that said, I went and did some research on it because I wanted to provide some context or like a framework, some structure around how to approach these situations. And so I found what I thought was a really good list. I didn't include everything on the list, but I included what I thought were the highlights on the list and the things that would be the most useful for our audience on the list. These are tips on how to approach volatile people and get a successful outcome. And this is from Travis Bradberry of Talent Smart EQ. So you can go to their website and look up these and some of the tips that I left out. I think they're good tips, but these are the ones from my perspective. And look, I've dealt with crazy emotional people a lot in my life. I worked retail for 10 years. I've run businesses for a long time. I've led teams of hundreds of people. And there's always, I call it the 10-80-10 rule. There's 10% of the people at the top you never have to worry about because they're just going to bust their ass and do the right thing no matter what. There's 10% of the people at the bottom and they're never going to do the right thing no matter what. And there's the 80% of the people in the middle, and that's the group you actually have control over. And what you need to do with them is get them to follow the top 10% instead of the bottom 10%. And so if you think about it from that perspective, what we're talking about today is how to manage that bottom 10%, keep them in check, keep them in line, and deliver a good outcome when you have interactions with them. So with that, let's dive into our steps here. So the first step is to set limits. And by set limits, you're going to limit your exposure to these people. It's really that basic. You're not going to interact with them unless you need to. And when you do interact with them, you're going to take very specific approaches. The first and most important one is to remain calm. It is important for you to not escalate your anger, your stress, your voice when they escalate theirs. In fact, I would argue it's better to, the higher and more irrational they get, the calmer and more rational you act. Now, that's not easy to do, but it's very important to do. And you can do that by simply asking them. There's two things really. So you can label their behavior. You seem agitated. Are you okay? You seem very angry. Are you okay? Very calmly, like that. Label the behavior. Because when you label it, they have to confront it, they have to respond to it. And typically that backs them off. It actually backs them down from whatever road they're headed down. But when you very calmly just say, you seem very angry, you seem very irritated, you seem, whatever you label it, you seem agitated, are you okay? Ask them that. And then ask them how they intend to fix the problem they're focused on. Let's say you're dealing with someone in your office and they're railing about a report that they have to do, and it's a lot of work, and they think it's totally unnecessary, and you know that the report is absolutely necessary. It gets delivered to your biggest customer, and it's terribly important that you do it and get it right. You say to them, hey, you seem really agitated by this assignment. Are you okay? And then follow that up. Give them a chance to respond, and then follow that up with, so how do we get this done in the most efficient way? What are your plans? What's your solution? Because they want to focus on the drama of the situation. They want to focus on the complaints and escalate. You want to pivot that and make them focus on solutions. And it's a really good way to limit that behavior because it stops it from happening, and they have to focus on a finite, specific, real goal, real target, real solution. And it really kind of derails that behavior when it happens. So think about it that way of setting limits. Remain calm, label their behavior out loud, say it directly to them, and then ask them how they intend to fix the problem they're focused on. Those are really good first steps. So second thing to remember is don't die in the fight. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to engage in high stakes, high drama conversations. You have the choice to just de-escalate, to not engage, to back away and come back when the timing is better, the situation is better, the variables around the situation are better. When you get into a situation where you have unchecked emotion, you can dig your heels in and you can worry a lot more about being right than being successful. We did a full episode on why it's more important in most instances to be successful than it is to be right. And you want to think about that when you're dealing with these kind of people. What does success look like? Success is a positive outcome. It's not winning the argument. Because the reality is you're not going to win an argument with an unhinged person, with a volatile person, with a person who doesn't see reality the same way that you do. So don't try. Because it can frustrate you. It can suck up a lot of your energy that you could use on productive things. And you'll spend it fighting the quicksand on an unproductive thing. So keep your own emotions in check. And you can choose the battles when it's right, when the timing is right. Sometimes you have to confront people like this, and you'd rather do it in optimal circumstances than to let them dictate the timing and the terms of how you're going to have these conversations. So think about that. Don't die in the fight. If you see that it's a bad time or bad situation, there's nothing wrong with saying, why don't we take a walk? Why don't we get a drink? Why don't we take a break? And we'll revisit this somewhere down the road. If you have to do it that day, do it that day. But even better if you can kick the can down the road a couple days, give everyone a chance for cooler heads to prevail, and you have a chance to gather your thoughts, approach the conversation in a rational way, and develop your strategy for dealing with this person and managing them effectively. Rise above. So rise above is real straightforward. When someone, like we talked about earlier, when someone escalates their emotions and escalates their kind of mania around something, the more calm you can be, the better. This is something I do a very good job of. I played baseball and then I umpired baseball as well. And I used to tell coaches before the games, look, I've been a coach. I know how frustrating things can be. So if you've got a problem, you can come out, and as long as it's not a personal attack, I really don't care if you blow off some steam for 15, 20 seconds. But when I say it's time, it's over. And if you have a problem with that, I'll run you right out of the game. But it doesn't bother me at all for you to come out and say, that was a terrible call. You missed that call. I think you're out of position. I think that was a bad job by you. I used to say a lot of times on a really close play, I'd make a save for an out call, and the coach would come out from the team that didn't get the call they wanted, and he would say, "You missed that call," and I would say, "Could have. It was pretty close," just like that, and that would almost always de-escalate that situation. So I would, if it kept going, I would say, "Look, we both have an opinion. Mine's the only one that matters. I know it's frustrating. Go back in and coach your kids. Like it's time. We're done. So rise above it. Don't get involved in it. Just stay out of it. Like don't get engaged in those scenarios. You can do it. You can just do it. You can make up your mind and say, I'm not going to get emotional about this. I'm not going to get involved in this. And calmly and rationally speak to the person. The more you do that, the more it takes the wind out of their sails. And the next tip is directly related to that. Stay aware of your emotions. You may find yourself, you can feel it when it's happening. When you're dealing with someone who's just kind of gone off the rails and their thinking is bad, a lot of times the best thing you can do is just acknowledge and say, I hear you. I get it. Smile and nod. In the South, there's a saying, bless your heart. Bless your heart is a polite Southern way of saying, you're wacko. Fuck you. Like, that's what it means in Southern vernacular. So bless your heart is really putting someone in their place. That's the way they see it. But just saying, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate your comments. I heard what you said. Those are all ways of acknowledging what they said without agreeing with it, without giving energy to it, without engaging in a debate around it. Just stay aware of your emotions, stay calm, stay rational, and acknowledge that they're making a point. You don't have to agree with the point. You don't have to debate the point. You don't have to refute the point. All you have to do is acknowledge it. And when you do that, it takes two people to fight. And if you refuse to engage in the fight, there's no fight. It's really that simple. Hard to do in some instances because emotions are high and et cetera, et cetera. So think through that. I have a sister who's involved in hockey, and my kids played hockey too. And she was texting us about a situation with another mom where the other mom was kind of unhinged, and this is around COVID and COVID in the locker room. And one of the kids had COVID and gave it to everybody else. And this mom was appointed herself the end all be all know it all for all things COVID. And my sister said, she texted the group and said, what should I do? And I said, you should ignore it. Just say, got it. Appreciate your perspective. You don't have to agree with her. You don't have to do what she says. You don't have to argue with her. Just move on. And that's what she did. And the other mom got so frustrated, she just gave up because nobody took the bait. Nobody engaged in the fight with her. And if there's no oxygen, the fire goes out. So don't give oxygen to the fire by engaging in it and letting your emotions rise. Stay aware of your emotions. Next is establish boundaries, which is similar to set limits. But when I'm talking about established boundaries, you have to do so consciously and proactively and just say, you know what, I'm not going to engage with this person in front of the group. I'm not going to do it on group emails or group texts. There's boundaries on how I'm going to engage with this person. I'm only going to do it one-on-one. I'm only going to do it when we're face-to-face. I'm only going to do it during work hours. Those are all boundaries in which you can just say, hey, we're going to need to pick this up at another point. I got somewhere to be. I got something to do. Whatever the case may be, you can establish those boundaries, but you have to do it consciously and proactively. Like you need to set those limits and communicate those limits. Be clear about your expectations. You don't have to be emotional about it. You just have to be firm about it. The next one is super important, and I talk about this a lot, especially in negotiations. Don't focus on problems, only solutions. Another way to say that is don't let what you can't do get in the way of what you can do. Now, it's important to acknowledge when there's problems, and it's important to acknowledge when there's hurdles or setbacks or things that are difficult. But if you don't have control over them, you're wasting your time. So focus on solutions. Quit thinking about how your difficult person is and focus instead on how you're going to handle them. Like you don't have control over them being difficult, but you certainly have control over how you interact with them when they are difficult. You certainly have control over where and when you interact with them when they're difficult, because it puts you in control when you do those things. So if you focus on solutions and you force them to focus on solutions, always steer them back to the solution. When they get going to get on their rant, say, got it, good perspective. Now, how do we solve the problem at hand, which is X? Always bring it back to the solution to the problem. Don't spend a bunch of time bitching and listening about the problems or challenges. Refocus the conversation on the solutions. It's terribly. Is don't forget. So this is the old forgive but not forget. And it's absolutely imperative. So if you do wind up in a situation where you have kind of a public row with somebody, you need to remember that. Remember what the scenario was. Remember what the situation was. Remember who was involved. Remember some of the ancillary details around it so that you can recognize those potential situations in the future and you can deal with them proactively and get ahead of them and stop it from happening. You can derail it from happening the next time. So you just don't get bogged down when those things happen. Don't let it affect you, but don't forget it. Like, remember what happened, remember how it happened. So when you see those set of circumstances present themselves again, you're ahead of it and you can stop it from happening the next time. So I think that's terribly important. So those are the tips that we came up with to deal with volatile or irrational people. They work. I use them a lot. By far the most important one is the more kind of crazy and irrational they get, the calmer you are. If you've ever seen a debate where someone's yelling and someone's speaking calmly, the person speaking calmly almost always looks like they're winning the debate and they're smarter, even if they're way off base. The person that's yelling and screaming could be 100% correct in what they're saying, but the way that they're saying it just alienates the audience and it loses people. So you don't want to get into that situation. You control your emotions. You control how you react. And if you do that, you're going to be shocked at how much easier it is to derail somebody when they're kind of going off their rocker on stuff and really acting irrationally. So hope you find those helpful. Hope you guys are able to put those to use in your day-to-day interactions with people. Great way to go. Great way to approach dealing with difficult people. All of those things will work, but you need to have a plan around them. You need to think about them consciously. So I hope you're able to implement these strategies into your future interactions. So thanks again, guys, for coming back and joining us. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to head over to saltygingertalk.com. We've got our newsletter on there that you can subscribe to get sent to your email every day. We've got all of our podcast episodes on there and links to all of our content on TikTok and YouTube and Podbean. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcaster channel on whatever platform you consume our content on. So really appreciate you coming back. Really appreciate the support from the group. And we'll see you next time. Everybody have a great week.